The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. When one studies Buddhism, one studies the self. When one studies oneself, one forgets the self. When one forgets the self, one becomes enlightened by all things. During the past 2 days, we've considered the first 2 sentences. What is the mind that seeks, and what does it mean to seek? Today we'll look at the way itself. It's known by so many different names: enlightenment, satori, complete understanding, nirvana, realization, awakening. The name isn't important. The important thing is, regardless of what we call it, it's important that the way is ever present. It's the way we train. It's the way we live. It's eternal. When we first come to Buddhism, one of the teachings that we hear right off are the 4 Noble Truths. The first is that suffering exists. The second identifies the cause of suffering. The third is the remedy for suffering. And the fourth is the Eightfold Path, the practices that lead to release from suffering. Immediately the mind forms a picture of a pathway from the place where we stand to the place where all suffering will cease, where peace will permeate our minds, where we'll understand the truths of life. In fact, the Eightfold Path is the gateway to being fully present in the world in a way which leads to truth, peace, and real satisfaction. It's the way to be walked daily. Its true place is in the innermost heart, not in the knowing mind. It does its work by posing honest questions and by pointing to the simple next step. The Eightfold Path is now, today, every day. In other words, practicing right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. These are the gateway to now, to just this. It's the way we train to find the way and to realize the way. But what exactly is the way? Completing life's great matter, gaining the way, means only that you have clarified the true meaning of practice, that you clearly understand in which direction you have to go, and on what you should place absolute value in life. To do this, we must accept this body and this mind and everything we encounter as our life. The Dharma teaches us that body and mind are one. Essence and material form are not two. They are one. This is the reality of our life. Never two, just one. Everything we meet is our life. Self and the world are actually one reality. And what is this reality? A few words about our lives in this world. We commonly view the world as a kind of stage on which we live out our lives. We know that we're not the first players on the stage, nor will we be the last. We believe that we entered the stage in the middle of the story, and that when we exit, the story will continue. Uchiyama Roshi asks us to consider a different view of life. of reality, of the world. He says that we each construct our own world, our own reality. When we look around us, we can see the same things others see, but we see them differently. We each have our own perspective on almost everything. When we compare our perspective with someone else's, we often say something like, "I never looked at it like that." This matters deeply when we aspire to manifest the reality of oneness, not two. My view and your view do not represent reality. Each is just a part of the picture. Our aspiration is to see and to manifest absolute reality. A human being's mental picture of the world can't be a perfect copy of reality. Within this mental map, there are things we think are good, useful, or valuable, and there are other things we think are bad, useless, or worthless. Usually we take it for granted that the fabricated picture of the world in our minds is the world itself. This is our basic delusion, and it causes many problems. Awakening begins when we learn to accept and deal with what is actually present, no matter what it is. Dogen teaches us the importance of accepting this body and mind and everything we encounter as our life. When we do this, the self and the entire world become one seamless reality. This means that each and everything we do in our daily lives becomes a manifestation of our practice. The Buddha's teaching is not something we can understand merely with our intellect. The only way is to carry it out, to live it. When we're living in harmony with absolute reality, there is no separation between absolute reality and us. When we truly practice, there is no separation between subject and object, or between the self and all other beings. Uchiyama Roshi says that many people have a preconception about attaining enlightenment. They think that someone who has been deluded becomes enlightened through some kind of sudden experience, and that the person will never be deluded again. This, of course, is not true. But when you sit and let go of thoughts right now, you can certainly do it in that moment. In that moment, all restraints that bind you hand and foot disappear at once. All you have to do is repeat this practice over and over, over and over, every day. Reverend Master Daishin Morgan tells us, to know oneself directly is not a matter of having opinions and views about ourselves. It's to go right into the doubt that we all have about our true worth. When that doubt is utterly accepted and allowed to reveal itself, we awaken to the realization that it isn't doubt at all, but the prompting to know our true freedom. We doubt ourselves from the fear that we won't be able to manifest our true wish, and we don't even know we're doing it. Uchiyama Roshi describes true freedom like this: without being tossed about by personal feelings and ideas, just returning to the life of the true self. Without envying or being arrogant toward those around us, neither being self-deprecating nor competing with others, yet on the other hand not falling into the trap of laziness, negligence, or carelessness, just manifesting that life of the self with all the vigor we have. Here is where the glory of life comes forth and where the light of Buddha shines. It shines where we manifest our own life. The way we live is actually mysterious. The truth isn't hidden, but always here, always right in front of us, whether we can see it or not. The goal of our practice is not to experience something different from our day-to-day lives. It's to see deeply into the reality of each being and each thing, including this one, us. From one perspective, we're always living within the enlightenment of Buddha. From another perspective, no matter how hard or how long we practice in this lifetime, we'll still be limited individuals. The reality of these two simultaneously true perspectives is truly wondrous. At all times, we have the potential to do either right or wrong, and within this perspective, we can appreciate both positive and negative experience as simply the scenery of our lives. We talk a lot about peace. Sawaki Koto describes it like this. Sawaki Koto says that the Buddha's teaching guides us to the place where nothing is ever the matter. How often do we hear or say, "What's the matter with me?" or with her or with him? When life isn't going as we expect, we often leap to the conclusion that something's wrong. Something wrong is happening. Something is the matter. We ask each other, "What's the matter with you?" However, from the perspective of practice, nothing is ever the matter. It's just that something isn't as we expected or intended. Nothing is the matter. Life is just happening. Contemplating a life filled with peace is very seductive. Peace of mind. Isn't that what we all want? But it turns out that peace of mind isn't what we often think. True peace, contentment, is always available. Contentment is one of the things we realize through our practice. Peace is not the cessation or extinction of life. It isn't seclusion or escapism. Living in peace is the realization of life as life, and is not at all off in the clouds. Rather, all reality, undisturbed by thoughts, is reflected as it appears and disappears. Genuine peace is like a clear mirror that simply reflects all images as they are. It reflects everything as it happens. It reflects us. There's actually a way to freedom from the chronic unhappiness and dissatisfaction of life. And that way is to give up the habit of attachment. To give up attachment is to find true peace of mind and peace of heart. To realize the way is to enter the way, and to allow the way to enter us. How do we do this? We practice meditation, we practice the precepts, and we follow where the precepts lead us. We practice wisdom by making all acceptance our aspiration, moment by moment. But what is realization like for an ordinary person? First, I'll let Reverend Master Daizui answer the question. He tells us that even one moment in which all cravings are absent provides a profound experience of peace. Even one instant of unhindered oneness with the flow of space, time, being, gives an insight into the true nature of ourselves and the world. Even a moment of getting close to these conditions allows for a taste, a deep drink of enlightenment, which is enough to change a person's life. This universe of ours is not only changing and empty, but also at the very same time, it's utterly chock full and awesome. Another way to put this is that space, time, being itself is ultimate truth, and to be at one with it is to find the peace that we are all searching. Now I'll let Reverend Master Daishin Morgan talk about realization. There is no path to reality. We can only precipitate ourselves into this that we already are. To experience this is to know that the wish, the whole of life, and all of existence has no duration. It is eternal. If we look directly at the experience of life, there is neither birth nor death in this moment. It is just this, and it has no boundary. To surrender the illusion of a separate self and all its worries into the reality of this leads to profound peace. The doubts and confusions of life, the fears and desires, all these can be surrendered in meditation. One has to trust meditation that much. When one does so, there is a knowing of oneself in the world and a deep sense of connection with the world. And now I'll let Great Master Dogen have the last word, since he was the one who gave us our Soto Zen practice in the first place. In his Shobogenzo chapter, my translation that I was using is called Only a Buddha Together with a Buddha. He wrote a short and very beautiful description of realization. And I'm going to read this slowly, sentence by sentence there, because each one is complete in itself. He says, when you realize Buddha Dharma, you do not think, this is realization, just as I expected. Even if you think so, realization inevitably differs from your expectation. Realization is not like your conception of it. Accordingly, realization cannot take place as previously conceived. When you realize Buddha Dharma, you do not consider how realization came about. Reflect on this. What you think one way or another before realization is not a help. Although realization is not like any of the thoughts preceding it, this is not because such thoughts were actually bad and could not be realization. Past thoughts in themselves were already realization. But since you were seeking elsewhere, you thought and said that thoughts can't be realization. However, it's worth noticing that what you think one way or another is not a help for realization. For this reason, you become cautious not to be small-minded. Indeed, if realization came forth by the power of your prior thoughts, it would not be trustworthy. Realization does not depend on thoughts, but comes forth far beyond them. Realization is helped only by the power of realization itself. Know that then there is no delusion and there is no realization. Finally, I'd like to tell you what I learned from the time I spent preparing for these talks. The first one is that definitely the mind that seeks the way, the seeking, and the way are one. They are not three. When we talk about the wheel of the Dharma turning, the mind that seeks the way is the wheel turning. I learned that we must never stop asking the question, what is this? The answer is, just this that is here before me. Just this that is here within me. I learned that everyday mind is the way. And how can this be? Because as we walk through life every day, if we're practicing meditation, precepts, and all acceptance, something happens. The light gradually turns up, and we're able to see our lives more clearly. Everyday mind is the way. Homage to all the Buddhas in all worlds. Homage to all the Bodhisattvas in all worlds. Homage to the scripture of great wisdom.